My all-powerful ex-wife, the colonel, seemed to have forgotten something. Just as she could cripple the right hand I used to save lives for the sake of her comrade, I could at her father's life or death moment refuse the one surgery only I could perform. 2 years after our divorce, I was invited back to Fort Bragg as a visiting medical expert. The moment I stepped off the plane, I was swarmed by a pack of military journalists. "Dr. Sato, your father-in-law the general was in a car accident. He's in heart failure, and no one at Fort Bragg can perform the necessary surgery. Will you be the one to operate?" I replied coolly, "He's my former father-in-law, and please pass a message to Colonel Tanaka for me. If no one is available to collect her father's body in the end, I'd be happy to do it." The reporters exchanged shocked glances, stunned that I would dare say something so audacious while still technically affiliated with the military. After all, no one knew the real story. Years ago, Hana Tanaka's first love, Rin Fuji, killed my mother in a hitandron while on assignment. I took him to court, but within 3 days someone else had confessed to the crime, and the true killer walked free. Just as I was hitting my lowest point, Rin's mother was diagnosed with a high-risk brain tumor. Besides me, no one in the entire Fort Bragg area could perform the resection. My immediate reaction was to refuse, but Hannah had my sister and me abducted and taken to a military guest house. She pinned my hand to the floor with her boot, grinding it mercilessly, while several large men dragged my sister in front of me. May's broken, helpless sobs filled the air. Despite acting like a demon, Hannah watched me with a placid expression. "Kenji, either you get up and operate on Ren's mother, or I open that door right now and let everyone on this base see what a debauched mess your sister looks like." My eyes burned with rage as I stared at her. "You know damn well Ren Fuji killed my mother. His mother getting sick is karma, and you're forcing me to save the life of my enemy's parent." Hannah acted as if she hadn't heard my ragged voice, her gaze icy and detached. "Kenji, you have 1 minute left. Your sister's fate is in your hands." May's heart-shattering screams for help pierced my soul like shards of ice. My heart turning to ash, I finally uttered the words she wanted to hear. "I'll do the surgery on Ren's mother." Hannah embraced me, satisfied. "Good boy. When the surgery is over, I'll give you a new Rolex I brought back from overseas as compensation." I was rushed into the operating room, where the surgery lasted 12 grueling hours. The moment I finished, a nurse ran up to me. "Dr. Sato, someone broke in on your sister at the guest house. They said she was with several men. The news is all over the base. She couldn't handle the shock. She's on the roof of the hospital threatening to jump." I stumbled my way to the rooftop. There, sitting silently on the ledge, was my sister, looking like a shattered porcelain doll. I stared in horror. "May, come down, please. I'm begging you. I can't lose you too." The instant she saw me, a faint smile touched her lips. "Kenji, you're here." I walked toward her slowly, reaching out my hand. Her eyes were vacant, but she smiled at me again. "I'm sorry, Kenji, but I just don't have the courage to keep living. I'm going to be with Mom now." And with that, she leaned backward without a moment's hesitation. I lunged forward like a madman, but my hands grasped only empty air. A surge of blood rose in my throat, and my world went dark. When I woke again, the sterile scent of antiseptic filled my nose. I sat up feeling like a zombie and walked to the nurse's station. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 5 years. "I accept your offer," I said, "but I have one condition. I want Hana Tanaka and Rin Fuji to pay for what they've done." The line was silent for a moment, then a calm, clear voice. "Consider it done. I'll come for you myself in 1 month." After hanging up, I called my lawyer. "Get a military divorce petition ready for me immediately." I had just returned to my hospital room when a pair of familiar arms wrapped around me. "Kenji, what happened to your sister was an accident. Someone broke in by mistake." I pushed Hannah away, my face a mask of stone. She grabbed my hand, acting as if nothing had happened. "You wanted your position back, didn't you? I've already spoken to the hospital administration. I'll even get you that overseas fellowship you've always wanted. How about that?" I laughed coldly and yanked my hand away. "Is this your idea of compensation? A reward bought with the lives of my mother and my sister?" Just then, my lawyer walked in holding a file. I took the papers from him and looked at Hannah with a sneer. "You said you wanted to compensate me with a Rolex, right? Well, here's the bill for the latest model. Sign it." Hearing it was just about money, Hannah visibly relaxed. But just as she reached for the document, the door to the room flew open again. Rin Fuji burst in, his face a mask of panic. Hannah, my mom's complaining of severe chest pain. Did something go wrong with the surgery? Hannah's expression hardened, and her fingers dug into my wrist like claws. You said the surgery on Ren's mother was a success. Why is this happening? What did you do? Seeing her frantic expression, I thought of the cold indifference she'd shown the day my mother died. The irony was suffocating. Postoperative complications are common. Ren looked at me desperately. Dr. Sato, I know you hate me. Take it out on me. Please, just don't let my mother suffer. Hannah's gaze was menacing. Go treat her now. If anything else goes wrong. Kenji, you know what I'm capable of. I just stared coldly at the document in her hand. Sign it. I'll go as soon as you do. Hannah hesitated for a second, then quickly scrawled her signature. I took the signed divorce petition and immediately handed it to my lawyer. Submit this for review by the commanding officers. Expedited. The lawyer quickly placed the document in his briefcase and nodded. Dr. Sato, the entire process should be finalized within 30 days. After the lawyer left, I followed Ren to the private recovery room. The moment I walked through the door, a vase came flying at my head. Mrs. Fuji glared at me, her face contorted with rage. Did you do something to me during the surgery? Why is my chest in so much pain? Not wanting any more trouble before the divorce was final, I swallowed my anger and approached her bed. I had just taken out my stethoscope when her hand shot out and slapped me hard across the face. They call you some kind of genius surgeon, and you think you can just fob me off with a stethoscope? I held my stinging cheek, my face burning with fury. Mrs. Fuji, if you question my competence, you are free to request another doctor. But your repeated physical assaults are a direct threat to my safety. The words were barely out of my mouth before she slapped me again. What are you going to do? Sue me? Have you forgotten how your mother and sister died? You'll be next. She looked at me with a triumphant smirk. Your mother was a scam artist who deserved to be run over. Your sister was a shameless slut who sold her body. You're no better than them. Hearing the people responsible for their deaths, I snapped. I lunged forward and wrapped my hands around Mrs. Fuji's throat. What right do you have to talk about them? I can save your life, and I can just as easily send you to hell. A second later, a powerful force shoved me backward. I slammed into the nightstand, and an excruciating pain radiated through me. Hannah stood protectively in front of Ren and his mother. I thought you would have learned something after what happened to your sister. Instead, you've gotten worse, attacking a patient. You are a profound disappointment. Ren wrapped his arms around Hannah, his voice full of feigned distress. Hannah, I don't know why Dr. Sato just snapped like that. My mother just went through a major operation. She can't handle this kind of stress. Hannah looked at Ren's tear-filled eyes, her expression softening with pity before turning to glare at me. I fought back my own tears, staring at her defiantly. Why should I apologize to the people responsible for my family's death? Hannah's face was a dark mask. She gave a slight gesture to the guards behind her. Since Dr. Sato refuses to apologize, take him to the old family chapel. Let him kneel. He can come out when he's ready to admit he was wrong. My pupils constricted. The Tanaka family kept 2 vicious mastiffs in that chapel. There were stories every year about people getting mauled. As I was dragged inside, the 2 mastiffs stared at me like starved ghouls, their eyes glowing a sickly green in the dim light. I made a move to bolt, but a guard slammed the heavy doors shut behind me. The gash on my forehead was still bleeding, and the scent of it sent the dogs into a frenzy. They lunged. One of the dogs clamped its jaws tightly around my right hand, while the other pinned my body to the ground, leaving me completely immobilized. I fought through the agony, pounding on the chapel doors. Hannah, the dogs are out of control. Help me. But the voice that answered from the other side was Ren's. I remember how well-behaved they were when I gave them to you. I can't imagine them hurting anyone. Hearing Ren, Hannah's voice turned cold. Stop playing games, Kenji. I'll let you out when you've learned your lesson. Then I heard their footsteps fading away, and a chilling despair washed over me. A moment later, there was a sickening crack. The pain from my wrist was so intense it felt like the bone had snapped, and the world started to go gray. I didn't have the strength left to scream as my blood pooled on the floor and my consciousness faded. When I came to, I was back in a familiar hospital room. A searing pain shot up my arm, and I realized with dawning horror that I couldn't move my hand. How did this happen? Hannah heard me stir and rushed over from the sofa, throwing her arms around me. Kenji, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice thick with pity. The mastiffs severed the tendons in your hand. You'll never be able to hold a scalpel again. The hand I took so much pride in, the hand that had built my career, was ruined. How was I supposed to accept that? On the drive back to the estate, I stared silently out the window. Hannah reached over and took my good hand, her expression soft. Kenji, I've arranged a memorial service for your mother and sister tomorrow. We'll give them a beautiful, dignified send-off. I was about to respond when her phone rang. It was Ren. Hannah, my mom's chest is hurting again. I don't know what to do. Can you come over? Hannah slammed on the brakes, her face grim as she looked at me. Kenji, you'll have to walk the rest of the way. Ren needs me. I let out a cold laugh. Are you a doctor? What good can you do for his mother? Her expression instantly soured. Kenji, she's suffering from these complications because of your surgical error. I'm just trying to help you atone for your mistake. With that, she hit the gas and sped off, leaving me behind. I was left alone on a deserted suburban road. Suddenly, a group of men emerged from an alley. One of them stepped forward and stomped down hard on my injured hand. The agony was so intense I nearly passed out. Heard you're Colonel Tanaka's husband, he sneered. Thought we'd ask you for a little cash. The wound on my hand ripped open again, blood gushing from it. I don't have any money. The man grinned menacingly. You might not, but the colonel does. He pulled out a phone and made a call. A moment later, Hannah's voice came through the line. Who is this? Disguising his voice, the man growled into the phone. We have Hannah Tanaka's husband. Wire $200,000 to us, or he's dead. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a cold laugh. You knew I was visiting Ren's mother. Did you really think hiring some actors to stage a kidnapping would be enough to lure me back? Suddenly, I could hear Ren calling for her in the background before the line went dead. The kidnapper picked up a nearby stool and brought it down on me. I coughed up a mouthful of blood. Seeing the dark lake behind the railing, I didn't hesitate for a second. I threw myself over the edge. The frigid water closed over me as I sank. I thought I could hear arguing from the shore. He just said to rough him up, not kill him. If he's dead, who's going to take the fall for this? The next time I opened my eyes, I was back at the Tanaka estate. I tried to sit up, but was stopped by a loud crash from the living room. Hannah had just shattered a vase against the floor. Ren was holding her, stroking her back. Don't be angry, Hannah. Maybe Kenji was a victim too. At the mention of my name, Hannah's face twisted into a terrible scowl. One of them already confessed. It was all an act staged by Kenji himself. He's so shameless he'd do anything for money. He's no different from his mother or his sister. Her words tore at my heart, a pain so sharp it felt hard to breathe. She hadn't even bothered to ask me a single question. She just assumed it was all my scheme. The next morning, I went to the memorial service Hannah had arranged for my mother and sister. In the main hall, their black and white portraits sat where just a month ago they had sat in the flesh. I knelt before the ceremonial urn, burning offerings. Hannah, who had promised a grand and dignified service, was nowhere to be seen. The time for the burial was approaching. I looked around the empty hall, then picked up my mother's and sister's urns and walked out alone. The moment I stepped outside, I was surrounded by a mob of reporters. Dr. Sato, is it true you conspired with kidnappers to extort your own wife yesterday? First your mother dies in a staged accident, then your sister kills herself out of shame for sleeping around, and now you're resorting to blackmail to skip town. Is your whole family just fundamentally corrupt? Each sharp, cynical question was like a needle driving into my heart. I stumbled and fell, and the urns flew from my grasp. In the chaos, someone's foot came down on one of the urns, kicking it open. The ashes spilled across the pavement. I scrambled forward on my knees, my hands shaking as I tried to gather them up. Get back. All of you, get back. But it was as if they were doing it deliberately, their feet trampling over the scattered remains. Don't step on their ashes, please. I'm begging you. Someone shoved me hard from behind. I fell backward, and a sharp pain exploded at the base of my skull. A moment later, a convoy of military Humvees pulled up. Hannah jumped out before her vehicle had even come to a complete stop. What are you all doing? She looked at me lying in a pool of my own blood, her expression pained. She started to reach for me, but her hand froze in midair. She turned to her aide. Take him to the hospital. The aide looked hesitant. Colonel, shouldn't you? Hannah turned her back on me completely. I don't want to touch a man who would blackmail his own wife. He's filthy. Her words landed on my chest like a bolt. I was trying to sit up in my hospital bed when the chief of medicine walked into the room. Kenji, due to your serious moral failings which have severely damaged this hospital's reputation, we are terminating your contract. I wish you well. I watched him leave and gave a bitter laugh. When they needed me, I was a god among men. When they didn't, I was garbage. I spent 3 days in that hospital, and Hannah never once came to visit. After being discharged, I returned to the estate. I was about to open the front door when I froze. I am not divorcing Kenji. Hannah's voice roared from inside. And I never want to hear you suggest it again. The sound of her fist smashing a glass tabletop followed. Mrs. Tanaka was sitting on the sofa, her face a mask of disgust. Your husband was in a public brawl. The story is all over the base. It's a disgrace. If you don't divorce him, are you just going to let him drag the Tanaka family name through the mud? Hannah ripped the papers in front of her to shreds, her face dark and furious. I already told you I'm never letting him touch me again. As for a Tanaka family heir, Run and I will have one together. I stood outside, my hand gripping the doorknob so tightly the veins stood out on my skin. Later that night, I sat at my desk and called my lawyer. Liquidate every Tanaka family asset that's in my name. Though he sounded confused, my lawyer didn't question it. Understood. Your divorce from the colonel is in its final stages. We should have the final stamped approval in 10 days at most. I nodded. Please make it fast. I have to be gone in 10 days. Just as I said it, the door to my study was thrown open. Hannah stood there, her face livid. Where do you think you're going? My grip on the phone tightened. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the front door. Hannah went downstairs to open it, and Rin immediately pulled her into a sorrowful embrace. Hannah, my mom's been having terrible chest pains ever since the surgery. She nestled against him, murmuring words of comfort, but her eyes, when they found me standing on the stairs, were glacial. Why is Rin's mother having such severe complications? What exactly did you do during that operation? I shot Rin a contemptuous look. I operated on her brain. If her chest hurts, you should ask her why. At this, Rin looked even more pitiful. I've heard that a rare seaweed, dragon's breath, can cure any ailment. Since Dr. Sato insists my mother's pain has nothing to do with him, I'll just have to go find it myself. She's the only mother I have. I can't stand to see her suffer. As Run turned to leave, Hannah grabbed his arm. You can't even swim. You'll be killed. Then she turned her gaze on me. Kenji, her complications are your fault. You will go in Ren's place and find this dragon's breath seaweed. Consider it your penance. I stared at her, incredulous. My only crime was saving his mother's life? I said coldly. Hannah's face clouded over. When did you become so cruel and irrational, Kenji? She then had someone bring in 2 wooden boxes. I had my men gather what was left of your mother's and sister's ashes. Whether you get them back or not is up to you. I clenched my jaw. Even if Rin's mother is in pain, there are doctors, nurses, and the best medical equipment in the country at the hospital. You're a colonel, yet you're putting your faith in some mythical seaweed Rin mentioned? Hannah, don't you see how absurd this is? Her expression remained cold. Kenji, I don't want to repeat myself. I looked at her, a silent despair washing over me. My heart felt like a dead weight in my chest as I finally nodded. I'll go. Soon, I was on a boat heading out to sea. The waters here weren't profoundly deep, only 100 feet or so at the most. That was still the limit for even the most experienced divers. As I stood there in my diving gear, I watched Hannah and Rin sitting in the cabin sipping expensive wine. My heart felt hollow. Rin offered his glass to Hannah's lips. Are you sure Dr. Sato will be all right going into the water on a day this cold? Hannah drained her glass in one go, a small smile playing on her lips. When Kenji was stressed during his fellowship, he used to go diving all the time. He even broke a few records. Don't worry about him. The biting wind whipped across my face, and I instinctively flexed my right hand. It seemed Hannah had forgotten that the tendons had been severed. I had just reached the seafloor when a massive manta ray slammed into me, sending a jolt of pain through my abdomen. But then I saw it. The so-called dragon's breath seaweed drifting just below me. Gritting my teeth, I lunged downward. The moment my fingers closed around the seaweed, I started kicking for the surface as fast as I could. A second later, a shark appeared out of the gloom, its jaws wide as it charged me. I didn't dare hesitate. I unstrapped my spare air tank and hurled it at the creature. I was nearing the surface when a tearing pain shot through my injured wrist, so intense that I lost the strength to paddle. As I started to sink back down toward the shark's gaping maw, the surface above me erupted. A figure was swimming frantically toward me. It was Hannah, her face a mask of panic, and the sight was so absurd I almost laughed. Hannah, if I could, I would wish to have never met you. That night back at the estate, I came down with a raging fever. It burned for days before I was well enough to even sip some broth. I was packing my belongings into a suitcase when the door was thrown open. Hannah stormed in, her face livid, and grabbed my arm. What did you do to that seaweed? Ren's mother took it, and now she can't stop vomiting. Her condition is even worse. I tried to pull away, but I was too weak. You're the one who took it from me. Why are you blaming me now that something's gone wrong? Her eyes were dark and menacing. Kenji, your schemes are as filthy as your character. You had better pray that Ren's mother pulls through, or I swear I will make you pay. I froze. The look of disgust in her eyes was like a razor blade slicing me to pieces. She raised her hand, and 2 soldiers entered the room. Her gaze was frigid. Kenji, since you still refuse to repent, you will go to the hospital and kneel at the entrance. You will stay there until Ren's mother is out of danger. Take him. He is not to stand up without my express permission. I was dragged like a criminal to the hospital entrance. There, I was forced to kneel under the scornful eyes of every passerby. I knelt there from morning until evening when Ren finally emerged from the hospital. My mother is out of danger, he said. I asked Hannah to let you go home and rest. Just then, the pager in my pocket vibrated. It was a message from my lawyer. Dr. Sato, your divorce from Colonel Tanaka has been finalized. I've had the official decree sent to you. Reading the message, a wave of relief washed over me. I was finally free. I slowly, painfully got to my feet. I looked Ren straight in the eye. Ren Fuji, I said, my voice like steel. I'm going to enjoy watching what happens to you. Then I straightened my back and walked away into the darkness. After leaving the hospital, I went directly back to the estate. I picked up my packed suitcase, gave one last look at the house that had been my prison for 5 years, and walked out the gates of the Tanaka property without a backward glance. As I reached the main gate, a sedan pulled up smoothly in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing a woman with sharp, striking features and a cool demeanor. Kenji, it's been a long time. Back at the hospital, Hannah was sitting in the corridor when Mrs. Fuji's attending physician approached with a chart. Colonel Tanaka, the test results are back. Mrs. Fuji has a simple case of gastroenteritis. It's nothing serious. Dr. Sato's surgery was flawless. Hannah's hand holding the report froze. Before she could speak, her aide ran up holding out a cell phone with a panicked look on his face. Colonel, there's been an emergency at your parents' house. The moment Hannah answered, she heard her mother's frantic sobs. Hannah, it's your father. He was in a car accident. A piece of glass is embedded in his heart, and he needs surgery immediately. But the position is too risky. No surgeon at Fort Bragg will touch him. A flicker of panic crossed Hannah's face. The doctor beside her spoke up. Across the entire base, Dr. Sato is the only surgeon who could handle that procedure. It's a shame about his hand, but perhaps if he were here to guide another surgeon, there might be a chance. Hearing this, Hannah immediately dispatched her men to find me, but they all returned with the same news. I had vanished from Fort Bragg completely. Her expression went blank, and a sharp pain seized her chest. She clutched at her heart, stumbling toward the exit as she barked orders at her aide. I don't care what you have to do. Find Kenji Sato now and get him to this hospital to save my father. By the time Hannah got to the other hospital, her mother's face was as white as a sheet. Hannah, what are we going to do? The chief of staff has consulted with the best specialists in the country, and none of them can help. They all say Kenji is the only one who could perform this surgery. Hannah gripped her mother's hand. I've already sent people to find him. He'll come. Her mother looked at her, her eyes filled with despair. But Hannah, his hand is destroyed. How can he possibly operate? A note of resentment entered her mother's voice as she weakly beat her fists against Hannah's shoulder. If you hadn't insisted on helping Ren Fuji and his mother, Kenji's hand would never have been ruined. Your father wouldn't be lying in there helpless, waiting for the one man who can't save him. Hannah glanced at her watch, agitated. Half an hour had passed with no news. She went to the nurse's station and called the base command, her voice a furious roar. Why haven't you found him yet? How hard can it be to find one man on this base? Colonel, her aide stammered over the phone. It's like he just vanished after he left the estate. We have no idea where he went. The words made Hannah's stomach drop. Hearing this, her mother collapsed to the floor, completely breaking down. What now? Kenji's gone. You've sentenced your father to death. Hannah clenched her fists and dialed the number for the apartment I owned before we were married, the one where my mother and sister had lived. The call connected almost immediately, but a stranger's voice answered. Hello. Hannah froze for a second, then yelled into the receiver. Who is this? Put Kenji Sato on the phone. The person on the other end was silent for a moment, then exploded. I bought this place. Who the hell are you? Call here again, and I'll report you for harassment. Before Hannah could respond, the line went dead. Hannah stared at the phone, stumbling back. I had sold the only real home I'd ever had. A profound sense of panic began to consume her. Just then Rin arrived, having heard the news about her father. Seeing Mrs. Tanaka on the floor, he rushed to help her up. Mrs. Tanaka, what are you doing on the floor? The general will be fine. I'm sure of it. Mrs. Tanaka looked at Ren's face, then raised her hand and slapped him hard. Get away from me. If it weren't for you, Kenji's hand would never have been destroyed. Ren clutched his red cheek, a flicker of venom in his eyes that he quickly concealed. He turned to Hannah with a wounded expression. Hannah, I just heard what happened and came to see if I could help. Kenji knows the general is in trouble, but he chose this exact moment to disappear. It almost seems intentional, doesn't it? Hannah's expression darkened further. You have no right to talk about my family. Just as she finished speaking, the doors to the operating room swung open. A surgeon emerged, his face grim. I'm sorry, we did everything we could. San Francisco. I sat by a window overlooking the bay, my expression unreadable. A pair of hands appeared in front of me, holding out a file. This is what I promised you. I looked at the document, which detailed a 50% share of the profits, and raised an eyebrow. I thought our arrangement had become more about getting revenge on Hannah Tanaka. A smile touched Isabella Hayes's lips as she sat down across from me. If we're going to be partners, I need to show my commitment. Besides, it took me 5 years to finally recruit you. 5 years ago, Isabella Hayes, the heiress to the Hayes family fortune, had approached me about collaborating on a new antiviral medication. Her labs were based in San Francisco, but back then I couldn't imagine leaving Hannah, so I turned her down without a second thought. I held the file, then gestured with my right hand. I assume you've heard what happened, Miss Hayes. My right hand is useless now. Isabella looked at my hand, her expression a mixture of sympathy and something else I couldn't quite decipher. Kenji, you must know it was never your hands I was interested in. It was your mind. With that, she held out her hand. Kenji, welcome aboard. I took her offered hand and shook it firmly. It's a pleasure. Isabella slid a photo across the table to me. Hannah Tanaka's father was in a car accident 3 hours ago. The entire Tanaka clan is tearing Fort Bragg apart looking for you. The photo showed Hannah standing grim-faced outside and Orr with Rin beside her, head in his hands. I picked up the photo and dropped it into the trash can without a second thought. My hand is useless. Even if they found me, I couldn't help. Isabella glanced at the photo in the trash, a faint smile on her lips. She turned to a nearby crew member. Let's get underway. As I watched the San Francisco skyline recede, the fist I had clenched finally relaxed. Hannah Tanaka, I hope you never know another day of peace for the rest of your life. The Tanaka estate. Hannah drove home from the hospital at a reckless speed. When she pushed open the front door, a cold draft seemed to greet her. She scanned the house. Nothing was out of place, yet a profound sense of unease settled over her. Ren followed her inside, his eyes filled with greed as he took in the opulent living room. Hannah rushed to the master bedroom. She threw open the closet doors to find my side completely empty. The memory of me packing my suitcase flashed in her mind. She clenched her fists. So even then, I had been planning my escape. Ren looked at the empty room and wrapped his arm around Hannah's waist. Hannah, Kenji must have known that seaweed would make my mother sick. That's why he planned his escape in advance. At Ren's words, Hannah snatched up her phone and called her aide. I don't care what it takes. Find Kenji Sato. I'm going to make him pay for my father's death. Just as she was about to hang up, her aide spoke quickly. Colonel, An urgent document was just delivered to headquarters for you. It's from a law firm. Should I bring it over? Hannah's brow furrowed in annoyance. Just leave it. The next day, Hannah held a large memorial service for her father. The attendees were a who's who of Fort Bragg's military leadership and local business tycoons. After arranging the final details, Hannah noticed Rin flitting about, playing the role of host. She could see the other guests watching him with disdain, whispering behind their hands. I heard she let Kenji's hand get destroyed for that guy, Rin. Then her own father needs the one surgeon who can't operate. If that's not karma, I don't know what is. Everyone knows Rin abandoned her when she got injured years ago. Now that she's a colonel, he comes crawling back and turns the Tanaka family upside down. If it weren't for him, General Tanaka would probably still be alive. It's a damn shame. Mrs. Tanaka overheard them and her expression soured. She turned to her daughter. Still no sign of Kenji? Hannah scanned the crowd, but the familiar face was absent. Not yet, but don't worry, Mom. I'll make him pay for this. The service began and Hannah took the stage to deliver the eulogy. As she spoke, a slideshow commemorating her father's life was meant to play on the large screen behind her. But when the screen lit up, a collective gasp went through the crowd. Hannah turned to look and froze. Instead of photos of her father, images from the day of my mother's Hitandaran filled the screen. The photos clearly showed Rin Fuji in the driver's seat, his face a mask of cruelty as he accelerated toward my mother. One image showed the car driving over her body. Another showed him reversing, crushing her a second time until she was clearly dead. Rin saw the images and charged the stage like a lunatic. Get those pictures down now. Hannah grabbed his arm, her expression savage. You told me it was an accident. Rin looked at her, panicked, shaking his head wildly. Hannah, listen to me. This is Kenji's doing. He must have faked these, some kind of digital trick. If he had real proof, why would he wait until now to show it? Don't believe him. She threw him off her, and he stumbled to the ground, his face ashen. Hannah fought to control her rage and yelled at the tech crew. Get those pictures off the screen now. This is my father's memorial. Anyone who dares to disrupt it today will answer to me. One of the technicians looked at her, terrified. Colonel, we don't know where they're coming from. It's not our system. Hannah's face hardened. She grabbed a nearby chair, ready to hurl it at the screen, but in the next instant, the screen went black and a new set of photos began to appear. These showed the men Hannah had sent to terrorize my sister. A wave of outrage swept through the audience. She used Kenji's sister to force him to operate on a murderer's mother? That's monstrous. Angry shouts erupted from every corner of the hall. Hannah's hands were clenched into tight fists, her rage barely contained. Rin scrambled up from the floor and grabbed her arm. Hannah, this is all Kenji's plan. He let your father die just so he could wait for this moment to utterly destroy us. Hannah shoved him away and turned on her aide. You incompetent fools. Why couldn't you find him? The aide stammered. Colonel, it's like he just disappeared from the face of the earth. We couldn't find a single trace. Hannah kicked over a chair in fury. You've really grown a spine. Just then, the doors burst open and a new wave of reporters flooded in, their cameras all pointed directly at her. Colonel Tanaka, is it true you had an affair, arranged for a scapegoat to protect Rin Fuji, and drove Kenji Sato's sister to suicide? Colonel, you destroyed the hands of the only surgeon who could save your father. Aren't you afraid his ghost will haunt you? Colonel, the memorial for Dr. Sato's family was disrupted. Was that your doing? Now your own father's memorial is in chaos. Do you think this is payback? Hannah's fists were white-knuckled as she glared at the crowd. Get out, all of you. She tried to push through the reporters, but someone yanked her arm and she lost her balance, tumbling off the stage. She lay sprawled on the floor, humiliated, her face a mask of rage. No one moved to help her. The only thing that moved was the relentless flashing of the cameras pointed in her direction. For a fleeting moment, an image of me lying helpless on the ground flashed through her mind. A sharp pain lanced through her chest. Kenji, do you hate me this much, enough to repay every single cruelty I inflicted on you? Rin started to move toward her, but at that moment a police car pulled up outside. Two officers got out and walked directly to him. Rin Fuji, you're under arrest for vehicular manslaughter. Please come with us. Rin looked at Hannah in terror, grabbing her hand. Hannah, save me. That bastard Kenji is trying to ruin me. She slapped him hard across the face. What right do you have to slander him? If it weren't for you, none of this would be happening. He clutched his stinging face, staring at her in disbelief. But we're on the same side. Don't let Kenji fool you. Can't you see what this is? He's a vicious, manipulative monster. The words were barely out of his mouth when she slapped him again. I would never be on the same side as you. If you hadn't killed Kenji's mother, none of this would have ever happened. Rin held his face and laughed mockingly. Hannah, you're such a hypocrite. You brought all of this on yourself. You were the one who offered to help me, who said Kenji's mother was old and it didn't matter if she died. Now that he's coming after you, you're trying to pin it all on me. Hannah stepped forward and wrapped her hands around his throat. What right do you have to judge me? If I recall correctly, your mother is still a patient in the hospital, isn't she? His face began to turn blue. He stared at her, terrified. What are you going to do? She shoved him away violently. I'm going to do to your mother exactly what you did to Kenji's. Rin scrambled to get up, but the officers moved in and cuffed him. Hannah, you can't do this to me, he screamed. Hannah just watched, her expression like ice, as they led him away. The memorial service ended in a complete disaster. Later at the cemetery, Mrs. Tanaka looked at her husband's gravestone and then slapped Hannah across the face. You ungrateful child. If you hadn't thrown away a perfectly good life to get involved with that animal run, your father would still be alive. He was such a proud man. If he knew his name was being dragged through the mud like this, he'd never be able to rest in peace. Hannah kept her head down, her hands clasped tightly. I will find Kenji. Just then, her aide ran up to them. Colonel, there's a problem. There's been activity on your financial assets. Several people have shown up at headquarters today, claiming they've purchased properties registered to you. I checked. Dr. Sato has liquidated every asset that was in his name. Hannah froze, a cold dread creeping up her spine. Kenji had sold everything. Her mother staggered and sank to the ground. He's trying to ruin us. He's trying to destroy the Tanaka family. Hannah turned and ran. When she arrived at her headquarters, a crowd was gathered at the gate, all of them shouting for her to give them an explanation. Her aide met her at the car. They're all demanding to see you, and after hearing what happened, the top brass has issued an order for your immediate suspension. Hannah's face was a thundercloud. Still no word on Kenji? How can a living person just vanish from the base? She looked at the military police station nearby, then got out of her car and strode toward it. She walked into the station. Hello. I need to report a missing person. My husband. It was the only thing she could think to do. The officer at the desk glanced at her, took the marriage certificate she offered, and began typing into his computer. A moment later, he handed it back. Ma'am, you're already divorced. Why are you filing a missing person report on your ex-husband? Hannah stared at him, dumbfounded. What? That's impossible. We were never divorced. The officer gave her a contemptuous look. Our records show the petition was finalized 5 days ago, signed off on by a commanding general, no less. Now you're here looking for him? Sounds like you've got seller's remorse. I've seen it 100 times. Fight the divorce tooth and nail, then come crying when it's over. Hannah stumbled backward. No, that's impossible. Absolutely impossible. I never signed any divorce papers. How could we be divorced? Your records have to be wrong, she shrieked, losing control. The officer wasn't having it. He pointed down the road. The JAG office is 2 miles that way. If you have a problem with the official record, take it up with them. Hannah glanced in the direction he pointed and ran out the door. As she reached the entrance to the Judge Advocate General's building, a sharp pain suddenly seized her chest, making it hard to breathe. She pushed through the discomfort, but a familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. She turned to see my lawyer standing in the doorway. Colonel Tanaka, what a coincidence. I trust you received your copy of the divorce decree. For a moment, Hannah's mind went completely blank. She grabbed the lawyer by his collar. What did you just say? What decree? The lawyer looked at her, a mixture of fear and confusion on his face. The decree finalizing your divorce from Dr. Sato. You signed the petition yourself when I brought it to the hospital. Don't you remember? Hannah froze, her grip slowly loosening. She realized then that from the moment May died, I had been planning my escape. She ran back toward her headquarters like a woman possessed. The angry crowd was still there, and they swarmed her the moment she appeared. Hannah Tanaka, we paid good money for those properties. You can't just refuse to honor the sales. Is the Tanaka family going bankrupt? Is that why you're trying to back out of these deals? We're not leaving until we get an answer. We'll make such a scene the Pentagon will hear about it. They pushed and shoved her like a common criminal, but she seemed oblivious, walking mechanically through the crowd. They all followed her as she made her way to her office. She pushed open the door and saw a manila envelope lying on her desk. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, a look of dread creeping into her eyes. Suddenly, one of the men from the crowd lunged forward and snatched the envelope from her hands. "What's this? Classified documents? Are you refusing to pay us because the base is in some kind of trouble?" Hannah glared at him, her expression murderous, and swung a fist at his face. "Give that back to me." The man, his eye already swelling, kicked her hard in the stomach. "You hit me? Who the hell do you think you are? You're not the high and mighty Colonel Tanaka anymore. You're a suspended officer, which makes you a nobody." The crowd descended on her, punching and kicking. Through it all, Hannah clutched the envelope to her chest. She finally managed to rip it open, revealing the officially signed and stamped divorce decree. The last thread of hope she'd been clinging to finally snapped. San Francisco. I sat on a park bench with 2 tiny newborn kittens nestled in my lap. In front of me was a small sign that read, "Kittens for Adoption." Suddenly, a figure stood before me. "Hey there, Papa. Are these little ones available?" I looked up and met Isabella Hayes' gaze. My face flushed slightly. I glanced around before lowering my voice. "Their owner just went to the restroom. I'm just watching them for a minute." Isabella sat down beside me, unfazed, and I rolled my eyes. "Ms. Hayes, I never realized you had such a playful sense of humor." She shrugged, then turned to look at me, her expression suddenly serious. "I'm not joking." Before I could figure out what to say, my phone rang, shattering the moment. Isabella burst out laughing. "I'm just kidding. You should get that." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and answered the call. It was a friend from back at Fort Bragg, his voice buzzing with excitement. "Kenji, have you seen the news? They're saying you completely torpedoed General Tanaka's memorial service. Man, I never knew you had it in you to give people a taste of their own medicine. The story about your divorce is all over the base, too. You're a legend, an absolute icon." My grip on the phone tightened. I walked over to a nearby newsstand and bought a few national papers. Hana Tanaka's name was plastered across every front page. Colonel Tanaka divorced. Tanaka accused of fabricating evidence. Coercion in sister's suicide. Decorated colonel suspended from duty. The people around me reading the papers were muttering in disgust. This Hana Tanaka sounds like a real piece of work. A guy with Dr. Sato's talent could have had an amazing career, and she destroyed it. And all for some guy who dumped her. She deserves everything that's happening to her. I listened to them curse her name, but I felt nothing. I folded the newspaper and looked at Isabella. "This was all you're doing, wasn't it?" She didn't deny it. "I promised you I would make her and Renfuji pay." I thought back to that desperate phone call from the hospital and nodded. "Thank you." Isabella didn't say anything. Instead, she took my hand. "Come on, I want to show you something." I hesitated, looking down at the kittens. "But the owner isn't back yet." She gently lifted one of the kittens from my lap. "I'm adopting them. Someone from my staff will handle the details with the owner. Don't worry." Hearing that, I finally relaxed. Isabella drove us out of the city to a quiet spot by a lake. When we got out of the car, I saw that we were at a cemetery. I looked at her, confused. "Why are we here?" She didn't answer, simply leading me through the gates. She stopped in front of 2 new, simple headstones. When I read the names carved into the stone, my legs gave out, and I fell to my knees. "Mom." "May," I whispered. Isabella stood silently beside me. "I had them moved here," she said softly, "to make sure Hannah could never use them against you again. I hope you don't mind that I acted without asking." I carefully wiped the dust from their names on the headstones before slowly getting to my feet. I looked at Isabella, my heart full of gratitude. "Thank you." She simply nodded. It was part of our deal. I looked at her, surprised. A flicker of genuine pain crossed her features. "You went through hell," she said. I looked up and met her clear, steady gaze, and for the first time, it felt like the deepest wounds inside me might actually begin to heal. Fort Bragg. A bottle slipped from Hannah's hand and crashed to the floor. She lay slumped on the sofa, lost in a drunken haze. "Kenji, why would you do this to me?" she slurred to the empty room. "You love me so much. How could you be so cruel as to leave?" She tilted her head back, pouring more liquor down her throat as memories of our happier times flickered through her mind. Suddenly, A hand stroked her cheek. She started, then threw herself into the person's arms. Kenji, you came back. I knew you wouldn't really leave me. A cruel glint appeared in the man's eyes, but he quickly hid it. I'll never leave you, he murmured. Hana wrapped her arms around his neck, lifting her face to kiss him, but in the next instant, her eyes cleared and she shoved Rin so hard he fell to the floor. Get away from me. You're not Kenji. Rin sat sprawled on the floor. Hana, Kenji was always just my stand-in. Now that I'm back, it's only natural that he's gone. Hana lunged at him, grabbing his collar. Who the hell do you think you are? How dare you call my Kenji your stand-in? The alcohol had mostly worn off, and her eyes were now filled with pure disgust. Why are you here? Weren't you arrested? Rin took her hand. Hana, have you forgotten? You're the one who found the scapegoat for me. It's not so easy to reopen the case. The appeal was denied by the review board on an order that you personally signed. Hana's face hardened. Are you threatening me? Rin just smiled and took her hand again. Hana, I know you were just upset the other day. I don't blame you for what you said, but you have to understand, we're in this together. He pulled her into his arms, confident he had the upper hand, and leaned in close to her lips. You found the scapegoat. You arranged what happened to Kenji's sister. If I go down, Hana, you're going down with me. So why don't we just stop fighting and be together? He moved to kiss her. A second later, the sharp crack of her hand across his face echoed in the room. You fool. What makes you think you have any power over me? She shoved him with all her might, sending him crashing backward over the coffee table with a cry of pain. She then walked over and stomped on his hand. You know, Rin, you just reminded me. Your mother is still a patient at the base hospital. With that, she picked up the phone and dialed. Cease all medical treatment for Mrs. Fuji immediately. Panic flared in Ren's eyes. Hana, you can't. Hana looked down at him and laughed. This, Rin, is the price you pay for driving Kenji away. Every ounce of pain he suffered, I'm going to give it back to you. Just then, the landline in the living room rang. It was his mother. Rin scrambled to grab the receiver. His mother was sobbing on the other end. Rin, are you at the Tanaka house? The bastards at this hospital have cut off my medication. You need to tell Hana to have them all fired. Now that she's divorced that Kenji, you'll be the colonel's husband and no one on this base will dare to disrespect me again. That idea you had for me to fake the complications was brilliant. It drove him away for good. Before Rin could even try to shut her up, Hana snatched the phone from his hand. She stared at him, her eyes blazing with a cold fire. So all of it was a lie? Your mother faked her symptoms just to frame Kenji. He shook his head frantically. No, it wasn't like that. My mother just felt that Kenji had stolen the life that was supposed to be mine.